There are 7 titans. I believe there were 2 sets of titans. The first series has less hand and finger segments, larger teeth, and while still partially mechanical, are mostly organic. We can see 4 in the background of the opening, and just after we get a frontal view of 3 of them. I assume there are a total of 4. Series 2 titans do not appear in the opening hallucination, and are mostly mechanical in nature. I count 3. A 4th may be mid-construction. Let's analyze each. The most preserved of this series is the Drowned Titan. Its blood still stains the waters. This one seems to showcase the more defined mechanical structure, but of course proves it's organic based on the fact it bleeds. You could argue this is actually hyperlight or something of the sort, but it doesn't really matter, and it seems like hyperlight blood just evaporates after a short time anyway. More on hyperlight later. Take note of the strange head shape, the teeth, and most importantly the hands. They are whole and fleshy hands, no segments. Another titan of this series is in the Southern Labs, what is possibly the only living titan left. Sort of. I believe this is of the first series, given the hand and the lack of joint segments. You can see this thing had its heart violently torn out, or perhaps it was actually a more gradual process, judging by the scaffolding. Additionally, you can see absolutely dwarfed cranes, both reaching for its eye sockets. Conveniently, in the same region, you can find a pair of eyes and a beating heart, sustained in giant pods of fluid. Although in pieces, this thing lives on. When you think Western Titan, you immediately think this Crystal Titan. But I think this one is from the second series. We'll get to it soon. There's a ribcage and skull just sitting around, which very well could be from the first series. It's difficult to tell, considering, well, it's just bones. I think judging by the skull structure and the placement of a Series 2 Titan, I would assume this to be Series 1. Now if you were God, and you could make all-powerful giants to walk the earth, what would you make their bones out of? Bone? Or industrial steel? We can see pieces of the skull have folded rectangular tears in it, which indicate it's metal. Cool. The ribcage seems to be the same, so this titan died forever ago and probably had its organic bits chewed up by wolves. Right down to the bone. Industrial steel. At the starting area and on the map, there's a giant sword out at sea. Assuming the second set of titans are modeled after the first, this is a clue. The sword-wielding titan in the east, whatever's left of him, seems primarily mechanical, likely Series 2. If the second titan wave had a sword-wielding titan, why can't the first? I mean, come on, what else would carry it? This guy? The second series of titans seems to have more mechanical construction, obvious joints and segments, as well as being generally better preserved. I'm unsure which series was built first, but I have a feeling these guys came after. Can't seem to find any robotic titan remains in the south. It's possible the heart and eyes were to be eventually used in construction of the 4th Series 2 Titan, but it never happened? We can't be certain. Regardless, they need pieces from this titan for something. We've all seen this guy. He gives us the most clues as to why the titans are fighting and even some information about blueskins. Definitely mechanical. Looks sick. More soon. Previously touched on this titan a bit. Kind of hilarious to imagine this guy charging in for an assault, but he slips in the bath and dies. This titan seems mechanical. One hand is crusted delicately on top of the mountain, and the other smashed through its wall. In total, we can confirm 7 titans. The eyes may have been used to construct an 8th. A popular theory is that there was apparently a librarian race that lived millennia before any of the current races. They built the first titans and sought immortality, but eventually fell to ruin. The newer races seek the same goal, and obviously, felt the same fate. If this is the case, then it makes sense for them to copy the old titans. To be perfectly honest, I find the idea of the librarians a little pointless, and it seems to have a lot of huge holes. Okay, so, the events of the game happened thousands of years before. Cool. How does that contribute to the plot? Why can't we just rewind and beat the first time it happened? I don't know, it never really held up in my opinion. Also, people assume this librarian drifter is part of a librarian race. Stop dehumanizing librarians, they're people too. Shh. For real, here's her clear sprites, ripped from the files. Librarian could very well just be a role. To be perfectly honest, I think it makes more sense to assume she's a blue skin than assume she's an entirely new race that we've seen nothing else of. Just gonna cut in here and say all interpretations are valid. My pitch holds no weight over anyone else's. In a game that uses predominantly interpretive media to tell a story, there's obviously gonna be a wide range of ways to perceive it. So claiming your answer is a definitive fact and everyone else's is wrong is kinda whack. You can personally believe one thing over another, but you can't claim much is true. Okay, bye. Moving swiftly on. A theory I saw on the wiki was that the Titans are an enforcement of Anubis' power, and they defend the wellspring. In order to access this wellspring, the animal folk had to defeat these titans with their own models. This makes some sense, considering the titans were obviously designed with warfare in mind. You don't use swords to make things. Wait, no, there's orphans. You can make orphans. But if the first set has already fallen, and the second set is being built from the first, then maybe they weren't made to fight each other. Whatever the second series was used for, it seemed to backfire entirely. The artificial or synthetic races, blueskins, dirks, slimes, second series titans, so on, were likely used for slave labor or just generally not treated well. For whatever reason, they rose up against their creators in a brutal war that soaked the entire West region. We can see the Crystal Titan fighting alongside blueskins against the Tanukis. Like their predecessors, the artificial titans are equally violent. Perhaps the present-day racism towards the blues is because of the violent war. Perhaps they have a hand in the thousands of deaths that led to the wastelands today. Dating this war is difficult. Given they use green crystals as a power source, it's possible this event took place before the creation of Hyperlight, that pink power source that's everywhere, which means that these titans are extremely old tech. If Anubis, a black and red godlike entity, has its own set of titans, and par for the course, immortality, perhaps in an attempt to recreate that, the animal folk created their own titans and judgment. As a mirror, maybe the immortal cell, or Ember Diamond, was the wellspring inside Anubis, the one piece of the puzzle they could not create. They attempt to bind or seal Anubis, hence the diamond halo. Perhaps the Ember Diamond isn't actually the power source, Anubis is. The Ember Diamond just keeps Anubis grounded and tapped, to eventually create the immortal cell. If Anubis and Judgment are both tied to this one power source, that would explain why they haunt dreams together. They're linked, a god and a false copy. Judgment, sentient or not, mentally and physically harms individuals with the infection, somehow turning their blood to Hyperlight. If it's one thing the game teaches you, it's that blood doesn't just vanish. Probably why it's called Hyperlight Drifter. Perhaps Hyperlight originates from Anubis, from this power source. Hyperlight technology everywhere uses diamond symbols. The Drifter's dash, the dash shield, the modules, heaps of weapons too. This entire empire is powered by the blood of a god. Perhaps the original and final intention would be to convert all intelligent life to Hyperlight, to finally make them immortals. Clearly this didn't work out. Whether Judgment was designed intentionally and went rogue, or was an unintended side effect, is up for debate. Regardless, it has power comparable to Anubis, and yes, does utilize visions or hallucinations to wreak havoc. But you can't deny that both Anubis and Judgment would have physical touch to the world. They fill your lungs with jet fuel, for crying out loud, with fever dreams. To conclude, we're kind of unsure how the Titans fit exactly into all this. Were the mechanical Titans used to fight Anubis' Titans and capture them? Or were the Titans used in some Evangelion-esque ceremony to turn everyone into strawberry juice? I don't fucking know, but they were important to make a second set of. As always, drop interpretations in the comments, be respectful of what others think, and maybe read the library wiki page for a few fascinating interpretations. Stay safe out there, drifters. Adios.
Out of your friends, which are you? Truck freak crazy ass. The fighter.